This week, we're going to talk about the famous mitzvah of tefillin. But we're going to go just a couple of details that are interesting details that people don't usually learn about. So let's see. Source number 1 on page 3. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. This is the Shema that we read twice a day. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And then it says, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, you should love God your Lord, בכל לבבך, ובכל נפשך, ובכל מאודיך, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. And were the things that I command you today on your heart, ושיננתם לבניך, you should teach them to your children, ודיברת בה, you should speak in them, בשבתך בביתך, when you are sitting in your houses, ובלכתך בדרך, when you are traveling, ובשוכבך ובקומך, when you lay down and when you get up. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, and you should tie them as a sign on your hand, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, there should be a sign between your eyes, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, and you should write them on the mezuzot of your house and in your gates. Okay.
So it's a Valentine Day with a chef. I never thought about it.
Oh.
Which is tomorrow night.
We're going to see. אך העניין הוא, page number 4, the question, על פי האמור, according to what we said, שעניין התפילין הוא, that, what is tefillin? This is a Sicha from the Rebbe. The Rebbe in 1967 instituted, during the war in Israel in 1967, instituted the mitzvah tefillin, to go out and put on tefillin on every Jew. The reason why Chabad go all over the place, and puts on tefillin when you come to a Chabad house, the first thing is to put on tefillin, is because that's what the Rebbe instituted in 1967. It wasn't done much before that. People used to mock it to a certain extent. Today everybody is doing it, but the Rebbe instituted it in 1967. And when the Rebbe came out with it, there were many detractors to this whole campaign, unlike today that everybody is doing it. So the Rebbe is addressing it in this talk. So we're going to see this. אך העניין הוא, he says, what is the idea of putting on tefillin? על פי האמור שעניין התפילים הוא, he says, what's the idea of tefillin? The Rebbe said, it says, when a person puts a tefillin, what happens? וראו כל עמי הארץ, כי שם השם נקרא עליך, all the nations of the world are going to see that you have a commandment given to you by God. In other words, you're the nation of God. That's what they're going to see. Hey, these guys are different. Look what they have on their heads. Look what they have on their hands. They were told by God to do that. ויראו ממך, and they were afraid of you. The idea of putting on tefillin is to put fear in the other nations so we won't have any wars. They will know, don't mess up with God's nation. That's the idea. Let's continue. ולכן הרי זה נוגע לגאולת מצרים. And therefore we see that it is compared to the redemption of Egypt. שאילו זכו, that if the Jewish nation would have acted the right way, they would have wanted to go into the land, and they wouldn't have done all these troubles in the desert with the golden calf, with everything else, הייתה זו גאולה שלמה. They would go directly into the land without 40 years in the desert that they were punished, and then Mashiach would be here, and this whole redemption would be done. ואפילו לפי המצב שנעשה לאחר הבלבולים שהיו בינתיים, even after all these troubles that we did afterwards, הרי זה המקור והשורש על כל הגאולות של אחרי זה. Still, the exodus from Egypt is the basis for all other redemptions. כשם שכל המלכיות נקראו של מצרים, just like all the other kingdom are called the oppressors, just like the Egyptians are. עד לגאולה אמיתית והשלמה, until the final redemption, על ידי משיח צדקנו, that's going to come through the Messiah, עליה נאמר, and even the final redemption, we see again, what's the final redemption? We see again, it's exactly like It's not exactly, but it is likened to the exile, to the redemption from Egypt. Because it says, the final redemption is going to be, just like you left from the land of Egypt, I will show you all the miracles. That then all the nations of the world are going to see in completion. Everybody is going to admit, everybody is going to admit that the Jewish nation is the nation of God, and they will have awe of you. That's the idea. Okay. And now the Rebbe says, וזהו גם המענה לאלה שטענו, there are a lot of people, when the Rebbe came out with this mitzvah of tefillin, many people were complaining. It says, what do you mean? Why are you signaling out one of the commandments, the 613 commandments? You are signaling out one of these commandments, and whenever you meet a Jew, you tell him, you do this commandment. He says, maybe he should keep kosher. Maybe his wife should go to the mikveh. Maybe he should keep Shabbos. Maybe he should celebrate Pesach. But there's many commandments. Why didn't you all of a sudden decide this is the commandment that every Jew should be? He says, where did you get that from? So the Rebbe addresses this. וזהו גם המענה לאלה שטענו. This is also the answer to all those people that have a complaint. מדוע בוחרים להבדיל ולייחד מצווה מסוימת מצוות תפילין מבין כל המצוות? It says, why are you taking this particular mitzvah and you're saying this is the mitzvah that the Jews should do? What about all the other mitzvahs? והמענה לזה, and the Rebbe says, the answer for this question, במדובר כמה פעמים, like it is told, as it is explained many times, שלא אני הבדלתי וייחדתי זאת. It says, the Rebbe says, it wasn't me in 1967 that decided this is the mitzvah. It says, I didn't introduce something new to the Jewish world. אלא התורה אמרה. It says it's the Torah who did it. Where is the Torah? Where does it say it in the Torah? So it says, הוקשה כל התורה כולה לתפילין. It says, the entire Torah is compared to tefillin. The entire Torah is compared to tefillin. שעניין זה לא נאמר על כל שאר תרי"ג המצוות. And this thing is not said about kashrut, about Shabbat, about going to the mikveh, about family purity. It specifically says that the entire Torah is compared to tefillin. אלא רק על מצוות ספורות. There's just a few commandments that it says the entire Torah can compare to. וכמו כן הבדילה התורה כמה מצוות שנאמרו קודם מתן תורה. So it is similar to a few commandments that were given before Matan Torah. ואפילו קודם יציאת מצרים. And even before יציאת מצרים, וביניהם מצוות תפילין. So we already see that מצוות תפילין is special because it is compared to the entire Torah. ועוד הוספתי, and the Rebbe said that I also added, שיבחרו להם אחת משאר תר"י"ב מצוות, they should choose one of the 612 other mitzvahs. We have 620 mitzvahs. Tefillin is one. So choose one of the 612. ובלבד שיעסקו בהחדרת נר מצווה ותור האור. And specifically that they're going to do the mitzvah of a candle is mitzvah and the Torah is light. בכל מקום ובכל פינה ופינה, in every place and in every corner. ועד שעל ידי לימוד התורה וקיום המצוות, which means learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Learning Torah and doing mitzvahs are the most important things that the Jew can do. ימשיכו ויפעלו בגלוי את המעמד ומצב שמלאה הארץ דעת השם בעת משיח. That's going to reveal to the coming of Mashiach. That's what's going to give. When a Jew learns Torah and does a mitzvah, that's what's going to bring Mashiach. Okay. So let's look at a couple of things to why are we signaling specifically the mitzvah of tefillin to all other commandments. So let's look at source number 2. This is from the time of the Geonim. It says like this. This is in chart. You can find it. It's around 900 years ago. It was written. It says שאין לך גדול בכל המצוות שבתורה. The Geonim says there is no such thing as the great mitzvah in the Torah כמצוות תפילין. like the mitzvah of tefillin. It says the mitzvah of tefillin, there's no other mitzvah as great as that one. שהוקשה כל התורה כולה לתפילין, because the entire Torah was compared to the mitzvah of tefillin. And we're talking about בין תורה שבכתב, בין תורה שבעל פה, we're talking about both the oral Torah and the written Torah. שנאמר, because it says, למען תהיה תורת השם בפיך, because it says, so that the Torah of God should be in your mouth. That's the first source that we have of how important is the mitzvah of tefillin. That was around 900 years ago. We're going to see another source in Maimonides. This is source number 3. In source number 3, we're going to discuss, the Gaonim explained to us that this is the most important mitzvah. They didn't tell us yet why. What makes it so special? And we're going to see Maimonides is going to start going deeper and deeper into this inyan. So let's look inside. In source number 3, Maimonides says, Arba'a parshiyot elu. In the tefillin, there are 4 pieces of parashot, 4 sections of the Torah. Shehen, you'll find the first one in Shemot. It says, Kadesh li. It starts with the word, sanctify to me. And then it says, there's another section of the Torah, V'aya ki yavecha Hashem, and it was when God will bring you into the land, Shebesefer Shmot, that is in the book of Shmot. And in Dvarim, it says Shema, famous Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And then it says Ve'aya im Shamoa. And it says, and then the second paragraph it was, and if you are going to listen, to hearken to my ways, to listen to my words, I will give you the rain in its time and everything else. Hen שניכתבות בפני עצמן. It says all these sections are written by themselves. ומחפים אותם באור. You are going to cover them with a hide. ונקראים תפילין. And all these are called tefillin. מניחים אותם על הראש וקושרים אותם ליד. You put them on your head and you tie them on your hand. By the way, this is one of the greatest proofs that you can't perform any commandment without the oral Torah. Some people refuse to believe in the oral Torah. They believe in the written Torah and they don't believe in the oral Torah. He says, who told you the oral Torah? It's very, very interesting. What do you mean that you don't believe in the oral Torah? So I'm going to ask you a question. What am I doing right now?
You have something on your head. You use your right hand to put the bottle on your head.
No, I'm putting on tefillin.
Yeah.
Do you know what it says in the verse?
Put something between your eyes.
Actually, even better than that. I'm going to put it right over here. It's between the eyes and tie something on my hand. I'm going to tie this on my hand. And on my hand, where am I going to tie it? Right over here. This is my hand. I'm going to tie something on my hand and put something between my eyes. Where does it say what you tie, what's inside, how to tie? It's not between the eyes, it's over here. What does it say all these things?
It's not specific.
It doesn't say anything. In the written Torah, it doesn't say anything. Without the oral Torah, you would have no idea what tefillin is, what it's written inside, that it's black. And by the way, we have tefillin that people found from 1500 years ago. Maybe even longer than that. Yeah? Which means it didn't change from the beginning. The oral Torah, it was kept the entire time this way. Without the oral Torah, there is no way to understand any of the mitzvahs. All the details of how tefillin is, nothing. There's no commandment you can do without the oral Torah. So this is what the Maimonides is going to say. Rashi says, if you look at source number 4, Dalet parshiyot shebetfilin, there are 4 sections in the tefillin, passages in the tefillin. Shema, the first one is Shema. The second one, V'aya im shamoa, and it was, if you go into here, Kadesh li kol bechor, sanctify me all the firstborn, V'aya ki avacha, shebetzedad, debechul uktiv letotafot, ol zekron ma'anecha. In all of them it says, letotafot, all of them are reference to tefillin. That's why they're written over there. Okay. Let's look at the page number 7, where it comes to the Ralbag, and it says like this. והיה לך לאות על ידיך, it should be a sign on your hand. When it comes to tefillin, you should put the tefillin as a sign on your hand. רצה לומר, he wanted to say, שתהיה זאת הפרשה, that this is the entire passage. והיא, what's written in this passage? It says, קדש לי כל בכור. The passage that's in the tefillin is sanctify to me all the firstborn. כתובה, that's the passage where it says it. ותהיה לאות לנו על היד, and that should be a sign to us on our hands. Why should we have it as a sign on our hands? What's the connection? להזכיר לנו עניין זאת הפרשה, to remind us about this parasha. והנה בא זאת המצווה בדלת פרשיות בתורה. This mitzvah is connected to 4 passages in the Torah. והם, and what are the passages? קדש לי כל בכור, sanctify to me all the firstborn, והיה כי יבאך, when you're going to come to the land, שמע ישראל, hear Israel, והיה עם שמו, and if you're going to listen to my voice. ולזה ידענו, and this is how we know, שאלו 4 פרשיות כתובות בתפילין של יד. This is how we know that these 4 passages are written specifically in the hand tefillin. וכן נזכר בכל אלו הפרשיות בתפילין של ראש. And also these passages are also mentioned in the head tefillin. אמר בזה המקום ולזכרון בין עיניך. It said it should be a remembrance between your eyes. ובשאר המקומות אמר לתותפות בין עיניך. In other places it says a sign between your eyes. Again, the passages specifically say it. Now comes for us to understand what's going on and why is it special. So we're going to look at the book of Jewish laws. This is from the Alter Rebbe, book of Jewish law, and we're going to get some ideas of why is tefillin so special. So let's look inside. It says, Yekaven behanachat tefillin. It says, when a person puts on tefillin, he has to have some meaning, some thought behind it. So when you put on tefillin every morning, this is the thought that you should have in the morning. So let's look at the thought. Very important thing. שציוונו הקדוש ברוך הוא לכתוב 4 פרשיות אלו. We have to have the thought. God commanded me to write these 4 passages. Right? Why these 4 passages? What's so special about these 4 passages? שיש בהם ייחוד שמו. First of all, these passages has the oneness of God in it. It says that everything is godliness. It also mentions V'yetziat Mitzrayim. It also mentions going out of Egypt. So that's these 2 subjects. The oneness of God and going out of exile. Let's see why. What do you have to do with them? להניחן על הזרוע כנגד הלב. One has to put them on the hand against the heart. All of a sudden we're starting to understand something. See, the idea, why are we putting it on our hand? Because it says against the heart. It says, how is it against the heart? When you put it, the tefillin right over here, and you put your hand down, the tefillin are going to point right to where? Right to the heart. So you have to put the tefillin against the heart, ve'al harosh, and you have to put it on the head, keneged hamoach, against the head. It says, what's the idea? What does it symbolize? Let's see. כדי שנזכור ניסים ונפלאות שעשה עמנו, we have to remember all the miracles that God did with us, שאמורים על ייחודו. All the miracles show on his oneness. ואשר לא הכוח והמשלה לעשות בעליונים ובתחתונים כרצונו. He has the power to do in the higher worlds, in the lower worlds, whatever he wants. And so what is God to do with me? וישעבד לקדוש ברוך הוא הנשמה שהיא במוח. It says, you know who you are? When you wake up in the morning, your ego knows who you are. You recognize, I woke up. Immediately you know. The fact that you are alive, you immediately know. It says, you should know that this feeling that the feeling that I am, that has to be devoted to serve God. That I am, the first, when you put on feeling, that's what you have to think about. That me My mission in life is to do what? To serve God. Now, that's the first of all. And second, וגם תאוות ומחשבות ליבו. And this is what it has to do with that. You know who I am? The I am has to be devoted to God. And besides that, you know my heart? In my head, I can recognize that I should be devoted to God. But you know where it's really hard? In my heart. My heart immediately has all kinds of desires. It wants a nicer car. It wants some more whatever, honor, whatever it is, some more money, some more food, some more whatever. It wants something. So it says, וגם תאוות ומחשבות ליבה לעבודתו יתברך. A person has to take all these desires and use his heart for what? For serving God. So this is the idea before you put on tefillin. It says, who I am has to be devoted to God. All my desires has to be godly desires. That's what a person has to do when he puts on tefillin every morning. ועל ידי הנחת התפילין, and it says, this is what putting on tefillin means. By a person putting on tefillin is koret abore. First of all, you admit, somebody created me, and I need to serve him. That's the first thing. And also, all my desires that I'm running after day, those emotions should be dedicated to whom? Not for me, they should be dedicated to God. That's the whole idea of tefillin. This is what tefillin is. But let's continue. We're going to see it's not going to be that simple. In Maimonides, it says like this. כיצד כותבים את התפילין? How do you write the tefillin? So it says, look at the tefillin of Rosh, the head tefillin. The head tefillin, if you notice, the hand tefillin is one container. It's one big container. If you look at the head tefillin, you will see lines. There are 4 containers over there. There's 4 containers. And you will put one parchment in each container. That's how it will be. The head tefillin is divided into 4. The hand tefillin is one solid one. So it says, when it comes to the head tefillin, כותבים 4 פרשיות על 4 קלפים. You're going to write 4 parchment on 4 parchments. וגוללים כל אחד ואחד לבדו, and you're going to take each one on its own, ומניחים אותם ב4 בתים, and you're going to place them into the 4 houses, into these 4 sections in the head tefillin. שהם מחוברים באור אחד, even though it's one container, but it's one container divided into 4 parts, the 4 compartments. This is the head tefillin. What about the hand tefillin? In the hand tefillin, it doesn't look the same. כותבים אותם 4 פרשיות ב4 דפים על קלף אחד. You will take one long megillah, one long parchments, and you will write all the same 4 parchments, 4 sections on this one. Each one individually, but it is one long one. It's not 4 separated ones. וגוללו כמין ספר תורה, מסופו לתחילתו, מניחה בית אחת. You will roll it up like a sefer Torah from the end to the beginning, and you will place it into this one compartment. So this is the difference. Let's understand. The Rebbe here learns a wonderful lesson, page number 9. החילוק הכללי בין תפילין של יד לתפילין של ראש. The difference between hand tefillin and head tefillin, לא רק על פי הסוד, not only according to Kabbalah, אלא כפי שבא לידי ביטוי בדין והלכה בפועל על פי נגלה, also when it comes to actual Gemara, מובן ממקום הנחתם, we can be understood from where do you put them, שמקום הנחת תפילין של יד הוא על הזרוע כנגד הלב. The hand tefillin you put on your hand against your heart. ומקום הנחת תפילין של ראש הוא על הראש כנגד המוח. And the head tefillin is on the head against the brain. By the way, not over here between your eyes, against the brain. What do you mean against the brain? Why do you call here it's against the brain? Maybe here it's against the brain. So it says no. If you look at a baby, at a newborn baby, the newborn baby has plates in his head, bone plates in his head. And it's got one spot right over here, right? That the plates come together. They all fuse together. But until the age, I think it's very, very late. I'm not quite sure, a year old or even later than that, this slowly grow and fuse until there it's it's a very soft space to be. You can actually press on it. Don't try it, but it's a very soft place. It says this is the place against when it says to put, exactly that place. Makom shemucho shel tinok rofes. It's the place that the brain of the baby becomes fused. So it says, Velachen bad nachat tefillin shel yad. So next time, tomorrow morning, when you're going to start putting the hand tefillin. You know what you'll be thinking about tomorrow morning? Tzrichim le'akaven l'shabed alev. A person needs to remember, you know what? All the emotions I have throughout the day, about this, about that, all my fears, all my loves, all my attractions, all this is not important. You know what my heart should be serving? Should be serving godliness. That's what my heart should be serving. I need to take my heart and subjugate it to whom? Subjugate my heart to God. U'ba'anachat shel tefillin shel rosh, and a person puts on the head tefillin, what should he be thinking about? Tzarich lekaven l'shiabud hamoach. He needs to think about, I need to not only my heart subjugate to God, I also need to subjugate myself, who I am. My brain also needs to be subjugated to God. ונמצא שתפילין של יד הוא עניין הלב. In other words, the tefillin of hand, that belongs to the heart. ותפילין של ראש הוא עניין המוח. And tefillin of the head belongs to the brain. ועל פי זה מובן הטעם שבתפילים של ראש יש 4 בתים. Now we're going to understand why the head tefillin has compartments in it. And the hand tefillin doesn't have compartments in it. What's the idea? אילו בתפילין של יד יש רק בית אחד. אף על פי שהפרשיות בשש, it says, you put the same thing in them, and one is in 1 compartment, one is in 4 compartments. What's the difference? דלכאורה ממה נפשך? It says, I don't understand. אם זהו עניין אחד, if it are one thing, היה צריך להיות בשתיהם בית אחד. Both of them should be in 1 compartment. ואם הם 4 עניינים, and if there are 4 things, היה צריך להיות בשתיהם 4 בתים. You should put in both of them 4 compartments. It says you're playing both games. You're saying it's one thing, you write it in 4 things, it's almost the same, it looks almost the same, it's not exactly the same. It's either 4 or 1, decide. כיוון שזהו בהתאם לחילוק שבין המוח ללב. When we're going to understand the difference between the heart and the brain, we're going to understand why it is so. עניינו של המוח שבראש, it says, why do we have a brain? Why did God give us a seichel, a brain? לבחון ולפרט כל עניין לפרטיו. The brain's job is an interesting job. The brain likes to put boundaries. It doesn't matter what you're thinking about. It says, and this thing that I'm thinking about, where is its boundary? Until where can I go with it? And it tells you can go with it only until here. After that, it doesn't work. And you can go with it to the right until here, and to the left over here. In other words, it's a mitzvah to make money. Let's take an example. To sustain your family. It's very important. But there's limits. You cannot steal. There's a limit in stealing. There's a limit in embarrassing somebody. There's a limit in doing shady things. On the other hand, there's a limit in being lazy. You have to work hard. There's a limit to thinking in you. You have to use your brain for business. So there's a limit. All the time the brain is about limits, putting boundaries. That's what the brain does. ולמצוא מהו הצד השווה שלהם ומהו הצד המחלק ביניהם. It says the brain all the time needs to see what's idea are in common, what's the idea divides, but the heart on the other end, עניינו של הרגש הלב, but when it comes to the heart, when it comes to emotion, לא לחלק ולפרט, להסביר כל פרט ופרט בפני עצמו. When it comes to emotion, you don't work with boundaries. You don't tell your heart, let's love God until here. Let's love your wife until here. Let's love sustenance until here. There's no boundaries. It's attraction or not attraction. שהרי זה הפך עניין הרגש, שמצד עצמו אין לו מדינה, because emotions has no limit. Intellect always has to have its box. Intellect comes in a box, emotions never has a limit. רק השכל שבראש מודד ומגביל אותו. It says, what gives the emotion limits? The brain. The brain tells you, you're angry, relax. Relax a little bit. Don't get so angry. The emotion, it's so, and you can see it in yourself. A person can act. I remember it. You know where I remember this? I remember this being a small boy playing soccer with my new ball next to the road. And I remember my ball ran to the road. And there was traffic in the road. I remember I was maybe 5 years old. And you know what? I knew that it's dangerous. But it was my new soccer ball. I couldn't care. The emotion that it was my new soccer ball took over. It says, it's not like I didn't know. The emotions to save the soccer ball came before anything else. Unfortunately, I told you a story when I was 5 years old. Many times in my life, probably in your life, you know what it happens? We get angry on the most stupid things. The most stupid thing. And we get angry, you know, like what? Like it's the end of the world. Like somebody would have died. So what happened? Nothing happened. Why are you so angry? Because again, emotions have no limit. You need the brain to come and tell them, excuse me, you're going crazy over here. Emotions themselves, they're just emotions. Okay. ומזה מובן, גם בנוגע לתפילין של יד, from here we understand, when it comes to tefillin of the hand, ותפילין של ראש, and the tefillin of the head, שבתפילין של יד שכנגד הלב, in the tefillin of the hand, that it's against the heart, נרגש בכל 4 פרשיות רגש אחד. All the 4 פרשיות are one thing, attraction to godliness. ולכן הרי זה בית אחד. Therefore it comes in one compartment. ואילו בתפילים של ראש שכנגד המוח, in the tefillin of the head, that is against the brain, מודגש הפירוט ל4 עניינים חלוקים זה מזה. They are divided into 4 different things. קדש, בבית בפני עצמו, you have to understand this concept. והיה כי יבך, בבית בפני עצמו, each one in its own. שכן מצד השכל שבראש, הרי הם 4 עניינים שונים, because from the brain, it is 4 different things in the service of God. And like we say, the brain likes limit. It needs to make, this is the limit for this is the limit for that, this is the limit for that. But even though this is limited, this is limited, this is limited to this, yeah, the brain tells you, you still have the oneness of God. That's why it comes in what? In one box. All those things it tells you, even though they look, and in your brain you understand them differently, you should know, you know what they all mean? That God is one. That's what they mean.
Are the 4 related to the fact we have 4 mothers, or it's totally?
I never thought about it. They might have an effect. I'll have to research it. It's a good question. I don't know if they are or not. It's an interesting thing to research.
One we know, God is one.
Yeah.
But why not 3?
Yeah, I will actually search for it. I'm not sure. They might. Seder Avodah, it's possible because mothers is Bina. And that's understanding. So they might be, but I have to search. I'm not quite sure. Seder Avodah. But let's look now at the way we're supposed to serve God. So there's 2 things. In other words, if I'll ask you, the head represents learning, right? Learning Torah, understanding godliness. The head represents doing mitzvahs, emotions of the heart. If I'll ask you, what's more important, learning Torah or doing mitzvahs?
Talmud Torah keneged kulam.
Oh, so there was a debate. There was a debate in the Gemara, a famous debate, and some were saying that mitzvahs are more important than Torah, some said Torah is more important than mitzvahs. In the end, they all agreed. You know, they said Talmud Torah keneged kulam. It says learning Torah is against everything. Do you know why? It doesn't leave it. Shemavi leidei maaseh. You know why it's the greatest of all things? Because it will bring you to do. So if you think about what its statement is, according to the statement now, it says, excuse me, what's more important? It says, learning Torah is the most important thing, because without learning Torah, you will never do the commandments. You will not know what to do.
Also,
but it comes out, that's what's more important.
Masi.
Oh, it's because the Torah is just a servitude in order for you to do. So it's like an in-between answer.
But we talked also couple of years ago that the Torah also, how do you get commanded to love God?
Oh.
Okay? And if the commandment is study Torah, then you love God.
Very good.
It's a similar...
Yeah, we're going to talk about it now. וסדר העבודה שתחילה צריך להניח תפילין של יד ואחר כך תפילין של ראש. And it look at what God tells you. What do you put on first? The hand tefillin or the head tefillin? Hand comes first. Mitzvahs comes before Torah. Or heart comes before brain. Let's see. תחילת העבודה, the beginning of servitude of God, in the morning when you get up, the first thing you have to think about, הנחת תפילין של יד, is what is to put on the hand tefillin, which represent שמורה על העניין של קבלת עול. This shows, you know what? I am subjugating myself to God. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. You know what? I don't want any of this. I have to work on myself to want what God wants. That's the first thing.
It's when I put the tefillin on, I don't really want to do it. It's kind of like feeling, I got to do this. But the way you frame it, it's a reminder, I'm not the most important thing in the world. What I want to do is not the most important thing in the world. What my body wants to do is not the most important thing in the world. And that's a very strong reference.
That's exactly what it is. Excellent. באופן שהן התחלקות פרטים בדבר. And it says it doesn't matter what I want. I can want this or this or this or this. It doesn't matter. All my wants are not the right wants. I need to want what God wants. And that's why it's in one house. It's one direction. It's leave all these emotions that I have towards the physical world and go towards godliness. ולאחרי זה צריך להיות גם תפילין של ראש. And it tells you, you know what? A person might think, God, I don't do what I want. I'm doing what you want. Now leave me alone. So God says, I'm not going to leave you alone. Now, not only do I want you to be my servant, in other words, to do what I tell you, even if you don't want to do what I tell you, I want one stage further. I want you to understand. In other words, now is time. After you said in the morning, I'm not going to do what I want, go to do this, do that, I'm going to put on tefillin anyway. Now God says, I want you to understand why you put on tefillin, and I want you to come to the conclusion that this is what you want and this is what you love. That's what I want you. Mm-hmm. It's not enough just to perform it and not know who you are. You also have to become it. כי התכלית הוא שהוא יומשך גם בהבנה והשגה. It's not enough just to listen to God, you also have to understand God. We are in the middle of page 11. ובפרט על פי הדגשת תורת חסידות חב"ד, especially how Chabad Hasidus explains it. וכן הוא באופן העבודה עם הזולת. And by the way, this is not only the way you work with yourself. First of all, you just tell yourself, excuse me, I'm doing what God wants, not what I want. And then I'm going to understand it. Yeah? It says, when you find a Jew in the street, you walk in the street and you find a Jew, some people will tell you, teach him Torah. That's the first thing you should do. Do this with him. It says, The first thing you do with him is a commandment. And after he does the commandment, you invite him over to what? To learn some Torah. That's exactly the same idea. Not only with yourself, it's exactly the same thing when you're trying to influence somebody else. עם יהודי נוסף, with another Jew. וכן הזולת בחלקו שבעולם, and your brother that's in the world. ועד לפעולה באומות העולם בנוגע לקיום של מצוות נוח. Not only with Jews, also with non-Jews. שההתחלה צריכה להיות באופן של הקדמה, נעשה לנשמה. This is what it says when the Jewish people received the Torah. They said, Na'aseh v'nishma, and that's exactly what we learn today. What does Na'aseh mean?
Do the mitzvah.
Do the mitzvah. What does nishma mean?
Understand.
Understand here, but it means over here. The nishma means after we do the mitzvah, then it's not enough. We also need to understand why we're doing it. It's not enough only to do it. It's not enough only to be a servant of God. One has to also become godlike. שזהו עניין קבלת עול, אבל אין להישאר בעניין דנעשה. You shouldn't stay just doing what God told you to do. אלא לאחרי זה צריך להיות גם מהנשמע. After that you need to understand. ובאופן כזה היא כללות העבודה של נפש האלוקית עם הנפש הבהמית. Now every Jew has a godly soul and has an animal soul. כי מדובר כמה פעמים שלכתחילה אין להיכנס לטענות ומענות. In the beginning, whenever your animal soul and your godly soul battle, some say, explain to your animal soul what it needs to do. Just explain it to it. So it says, that's already you failed. You're going the wrong way. Because what's the first thing you have to do? To do. First of all, you do what the godly soul says, and not what your animal soul says. Then you learn about it, why you're doing it. Because if you're going to starting argue with the animal soul, you will lose every time. First of all, you do what the godly soul says. Then, the more you learn, the more you'll understand why you're doing it. But it says, don't try to interact with the godly soul, with the animal soul. It is impossible. You're going to lose every time. So even when you have a battle with the godly soul and the animal soul, it says, whenever the battle is taking place, I want to put on tefillin, but I need to be at work in 5 minutes from now. What's more important? If you start having, you know what your animal soul says? And what do you think? God doesn't want you to sustain your family? What do you think? And what's going to happen with your family? That's on a mitzvah? That's also a mitzvah. You can always put the tefillin on later on, after you come. Never mind that 2 days ago I forgot to put it on because I was too busy and I didn't put it on because of that. Yeah, that's exactly what the conversation is. If you're going to start this conversation, forget about it. The first thing you have to take the animal soul is, no way, I'm putting on tefillin right now. Later on, talk to me. Yeah, later on I understand why this is why I need to do it. That's the only thing to do. Okay. ולאחרי כן, כשלומדים תורה, after that, when we learn with him Torah, יש להשתדל, it's not enough just to tell the nefesh ba'amit, you're a loser and I'm a winner. You have to explain to the animal soul that he will want what the godly soul wants. You will have to explain to me that it's good for him, that it's for his advantage, that it is for his sustenance, that it is for his pleasure. You have to explain to the animal soul, you're going to have more pleasure following the godly soul than following your desires. And this is not just telling him what to do, you have to explain it to him. But after you subjugate him, then you explain it to him. שנפש הבעמית יבין דבר תורה, that he's going to understand the Torah. ולא שהלימוד באופן גזרה גזרתי, ולא צריך להבין זאת. Not just that this is the way we do it. You don't need to understand. That's not enough. You need to explain it to such a degree that the animal soul himself says, I want to do this. You know what? If I tell you you're going to go to, as a child, that you're going to go to Disneyland, right? As a child, you're waking up to go to Disneyland. Are you excited? You have to explain to the animal soul that putting on tefillin is Disneyland and much more than that. And if you didn't, you failed. It's not just enough to make him put on tefillin. It's to make him appreciate tefillin just as much and even more than Disneyland when you were a kid. He has to see it. He has to understand it. He has to feel it. It has to be him. ועד להבנה והשגה באופן של ייחוד נפלא שאין ייחוד כמו. Until the animal soul becomes one with Torah and mitzvahs. This is what tefillin is. Turning the animal soul into godliness. This is why tefillin is the most important mitzvah. This is what it represents. Taking your animal soul, as a Jew, this is the job of every Jew. Turning his animal soul into godliness. Turning the world around him into godliness. That's why it is specified as the mitzvah that one has to concentrate on. Because this is all of Judaism. שעניין זה, okay, I think.
So we want to try to trick our animal soul, not trick, I don't know if trick is the right word.
First of all, subjugate it and then make it, we're not tricking it. It's the truth.
Okay,
It's better for him.
So we want our animal soul to encourage us and inspire us to do godly things because it will satisfy the animal soul.
Not only it will satisfy you're going there. I didn't discuss it in this class, but I'll explain. See, when it comes to Torah and mitzvahs, we do not rush to do Torah and mitzvahs. It's called. Our desires for called Torah and mitzvahs, we do the right thing, we have a good feeling afterwards. But we don't run after it like we run after women or we run after sin. When it comes to sin, when it comes to women, comes to desires, we run after them. We have it all there. You want the animal soul the same way you run after this. God says, you know what I want? I want this animal soul to run after me. But in order to do that, first of all, we need to tell him this is what you need to do and just do it. But that's not enough. I want him to want to run after me on his own. I don't want to force him. I want him to realize that this is a true pleasure. Torah and mitzvahs is a true pleasure. Living a Jewish life is much funner than living a non-Jewish life. I want him to appreciate it.
And the needs of the body should be secondary.
Sometimes the need of the body should be godly needs together with God. It has to be godliness. The desires, the true desires, has to be desires for. I can give you an example. From businessmen. Many businessmen become businessmen. Why? They run after money. And you ask them, what do you want money? Money is power. Money can buy me this, and money can buy me that, and money can get me into this country club, and can get me into see Trump, and to get me to see Biden, and the money buys things. And they're into money just because of that, the sense of power. And the businessman can turn, and he says, you know what? I still want money. But you know what I want to do money now? I want to build hospitals. I want to build schools. I still want power. I want many hospitals. I want to influence billions of school children. Not million. I want to influence billions of school children. I still want the power. But now that power is designated to what? Not for me, not for my needs. It's designated for what? For his needs. A person, you can see, it's the same desire. It's the same desire. It doesn't change. It's the same power. It's just now designated, instead of doing what's good for me, doing what's good for God.